Hello, and welcome to another episode of Biblio Files, the program on AADL TV, where we take just a little bit of time each episode to talk about one book topic. This episode, we are going to talk about a young adult book that we thought was great. My name is Lucy, and I'm here as usual with Christopher and Amanda, and we have a special guest today, Phoebe, which we are very excited about. So, Amanda, what book did you pick?
So I've read a lot of YA. It's one of my favorite genres to read. And last summer, I read a teen book that had been on my list for many a year. And I read it, and I was super mad at myself that I had waited like a long time to read this book. The book I want to talk about today is called I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. He's the author of The Book Thief, which was a great book that was also adapted into a movie some people might be familiar with. I love this book. This book was written or published in 2002. It actually won the Prince Award the Prince Honor Award for one of the best teen books in 2006. And then, so the book it focuses on a young man named Ed Kennedy. Ed Kennedy is, the very first chapter is very engaging, and he's in a bank with his three friends, and the bank is being robbed. And he and his friends are just being young people and having this conversation, arguing, and they get into a scuffle with the bank robber, and then something happens. And then you've got this character, Ed Kennedy. He's an underage cab driver. He lives in a house with his very old dog who drinks coffee, which I loved. And he hangs out with his three friends. They play cards. There's shenanigans. There's young people activities. But then he starts getting these playing cards delivered with addresses. And he ends up having to sort of travel around. He becomes the messenger. He has to figure out why these people are connected. What does it have to do with him? Is it because he helped the bank robbery? So it's a wonderful story. It's a super quick read. It's super engaging. I love the way it's written. The voice of Ed Kennedy is just wonderful. It's a great story about helping strangers and learning from others, and you end up learning about yourself while you're helping others. So it's just a really, 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 really good book. I highly recommend it. Don't go forever without reading it, because I just enjoyed it that much, and I was really mad I hadn't read it sooner. So I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. Phoebe, what did you read with us?
So at first I was going to talk about a book I'd already read and loved. But then I decided to read something new. So I just read this book. It's called A Pho Love Story. It's very cute. So like on the surface, it's about these two immigrant Vietnamese families who have competing restaurants across the street from each other, who are just like always like trying to one up each other. And their two teenage kids, of course, fall in love, very Romeo and Juliet style. But then, without giving any spoilers away, there's like something deeper going on there between those families than just their restaurants competing. It was really fun. There's like this theme of food throughout the book, which I always love. It just like makes you feel at home the way they describe the food, and it's just so tasty. And then there's also them being teens, like about to go off to college, finding what they're passionate about, which was really fun to read, and like what moves them, and what do you owe your parents, and like what do you give up for them, and like when do you start living for yourself was a big theme, which I thought was really cool. And a standout thing for me was that there's a lot of Vietnamese throughout the book, a lot of like the parents speaking to them, or just like thoughts or phrases are going on. And my brain is like, okay, you need to look up everything they're saying. And then I was like, okay, maybe not, because it's like that really slows down the reading. And I just had to let go and be like, okay, that part's not for me. Like I can clearly read the story without knowing those two sentences, but how fun for the people that is for, and how exciting to see your language in a book and, get these little references. So they talk about community and like the immigrant experience a lot, which I thought was really good. And then another little thing that stuck out to me in this book was the culturally relevant references they made, which I don't often see because I think authors think it like dates a book, but they were like talking about leading men like Chris Pine and Will Smith and Henry Golding. And I was like, okay. And then Chef tells Bao, the two main characters of Bao and Lin, tells Bao that he reminds him of Anthony Bourdain. And I was like, that's kind of fun. You know, you're like, oh, I can put myself in this world because you're mentioning things that like are happening in my world. So yeah, it was really cute. Lots of layers, lots of just like fun teen love, being cute. So that's my book. Christopher, what did you read?
Well, I don't often read this age group. So I asked my teenage daughter for a recommendation, and she came up with this. It's Karen McManus, One of Us is Lying. And I don't want to put down the book by giving it a cute comparison, but it's kind of Breakfast Club meets Big Little Lies. So 5 students go into detention and only 4 of them come out. And it's a kind of a murder mystery. And the student that was murdered has a rumor blog. And it turns out that the 4 other students all had secrets. And this 5th student was about to reveal some of their secrets. But as the story goes on, you realize there are even more secrets to come out and more relationships between the 4 that you don't realize at first. So it's a fast read. It's really fun. And I will admit I'm not done with it yet. So I'm also waiting to find out who the murderer is. And I have some suspicions. I'm not going to say anything, but it's really a fun, fast read. And I'm really glad to have the chance to pick it up. So that's One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. Lucy?
Well, before I share my pick, I want to say that I have just now added 3 new books to my reading list. These all sound really good and also different, which is cool to show how wide-reaching young adult books can be. So the book that I picked for today is called Dream Country by Shannon Gibney, and this was written in 2018. And it had some acclaim there, like it was on the New York Public Library's best list and Kirkus's best list, but I don't think it quite got, in my opinion, I feel like it didn't get the attention it should have. So this story takes place in 5 parts, and they go back and forth through time between America and Liberia. And you start in 2008 in Minneapolis with a character named Coley, and he is Liberian. And his family is Liberian, and he's having a really hard time in school. There's a lot of conflict between the Liberians and the African Americans in his school. And so because he's struggling so much and he's getting in trouble, his parents decide to send him to Liberia, where they sort of trick him into it. He doesn't even know he's going there, where he's never really been before. So that's the first character in the story. And he has a sister named Angel. So you just meet her a little bit in this segment. Then the next part, you're still in Liberia, but you go back to the early 20th century. And there's a character named Togar who's being chased by this militia that they're destroying towns as they go. And the militia is trying to capture indigenous Liberians like Togar to have them enslaved to work for the plantations in Liberia that were created by the colonizers who came, like the enslaved Blacks from America who were sent to Liberia, ended up creating plantations in Liberia in the exact same model of the plantations that they had themselves had just left, which I found like that piece of it to be fascinating, that then they're turning around and wielding the whip that has like whipped them their whole life. So that's Togar in Liberia. And then you go back to the United States, but you go back to 1827 to the Wright family, where you're meeting this family. They're a Black family, but they're free, but most of the people they know are enslaved. And they have gotten in with the American Colonization Society. And so they are part of a group that is going to go to Liberia to create this new society. And so that's like the biggest part of the book is the Wright family. And you realize that all of these other people are sort of the other sections you've read, they're an extension of this family. And then there's a bit in the 1980s in Liberia where a man and a woman are falling in love in the backdrop of this revolution that's going on. So you learn a little bit about Liberia in that time period. And then the very last part, you go back to Angel, who was the sister of the character in the beginning. And this is 2018. And her part connects for the reader, all four of those earlier parts. And you realize why they were written the way they were, how they connected, and how they are put together and why they're put together. And that part, the last section of the book, like I was reading this book and I loved it. And it's some parts of it are really difficult, you can imagine, with the subject matter. But I was also learning a ton about something that the story that I don't feel I've been told before. And but you get to the end and you're like, oh, wow. So like the last section is one of those things that just for me just took the book from like I really liked it to just, whoa, this is an amazing book. I love this book. So there's a lot in there, and it's pretty dense, but it was just, I couldn't put it down because you kept going from section to section to section. And this author she's written children's books, she's written books for adults, she's written like picture books, essays, but her through line through all of her writing is that she wants to write stories that she feels are untold. So I think that's what she was definitely doing here with Dream Country. So sorry, that was not a short synopsis, but there's a lot in the book. So I highly recommend Dream Country by Shannon Gibney. I was blown away. So that is my pick. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add about young adult books or the books we've talked about?
I was just going to say that I also read the book Christopher mentioned, One of Us is Lying, and it was great. So another nod for that book.
Great.
Yeah, I'm glad that your teenage daughter recommended it to you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Bibliophiles. We would love to hear from you. As always, you can click the link below to make a comment. We always want to know what you're reading, or if you've read one of the books that we talked about, what young adult books are in your world. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.